Hello, everybody. Right now, I'd like to talk to you about ethnic minorities in the United States pretending to be white, specifically three, and how it actually matters. And who are these people I was talking about? One of their last names is Tanaka, one of their first names is Carlos, and one of their other first names is Raphael. But if I told you that, you wouldn't know who those people were. Well, of course, there's only two first names. I mean, of course you wouldn't know somebody just by their first name. But I guess I'm rambling a little bit. What do I mean? Dean Tanaka. Does that name mean anything to you? It might not. People my age, in their 40s or maybe younger, might remember Lois and Clark, The Adventures of Superman, starring Dean Cain. See, Cain's not the guy's last name. It's actually Dean Tanaka. Now, even though he looks European, he's ethnically got Japanese grandparents. He actually has family members that were thrown into intern camps during World War II. Flat out. He is a descendant of one of the victims of one of the worst human rights violations in our country. So what did he learn from that? He made a public statement and joined ICE. Very funny. It would be so funny if it wasn't true, but it's only slightly funny because he absolutely hates the Japanese side of himself. But anyway, let's move on. Carlos. Who's Carlos? Does anyone know who Carlos Norris is? Yeah, probably not by that name. People my age, maybe, and older. Actually, a lot of people know who he is because of the internet memes. Chuck Norris. You've heard of Chuck Norris, right? A lot of people don't know that his real name's Carlos. So he's another Trump-supporting fascist who once again changed his name to sound more white and to rely on his ethnic appearance of being European. So he hid the fact of his ethnicity to appeal to a broader base. At least that's what he says. He says it's because of bigotry. He didn't really want to use his real name, so he went with Chuck. Now, a lot of people did it back then, so it's not surprising. But okay, he's another Trump supporter. Now, Herbert Hoover had this little plan, and it was I'm not even going to say it, Operation Racist Word for a Hispanic person, where basically what we're doing now, what was done back then. They just started rounding up people that were perceived to be illegal immigrants. Of course, it didn't work, and they just started rounding up everyone that was brown. Started putting on tariffs and eventually crashed the economy into a depression. And it looks like history is repeating itself. So Carlos Norris's people were literally rounded up in our own country. And even though that was the 30s and that was before he was born, the bigotry and the racism was towards Hispanic people was still so bad that when Chuck was a young man, he changed his name from Carlos to Chuck to escape that bigotry. And the last person I wanted to talk to you about is Rafael Cruz. You probably don't know who that is by Rafael Cruz, but you know him as Ted Cruz. See, Ted, we would have thought it was just a nickname for Theodore. It's actually not. It's a nickname for Raphael. Because Ted Cruz is not a white guy. He is a Hispanic man. He's a mixed race with Europeans, but he came over to the country when he was a small child. He's only like 10 years older than me, so he probably didn't have to change his name to Ted just to appease everybody. Or maybe he did. Maybe the bigotry when he was a kid was bad to the point where he had to change his name to Ted. I don't know. Personally, I think that he hates the Cuban side in him and probably just wanted to sound more white. That's just me, though. Now, to get away from my speculation, Dean Tanaka, who became Dean Cain, Carlos Norris, who became Chuck Norris, and Rafael Cruz, who became Ted Cruz, all do their best to act European and white, like me. And why? Because of the bigotry and the racism that has been projected on minority people, so oligarchs can get the voting numbers they want, so they can get their low taxes and they can get their authoritarian government. It literally caused these three men to literally hide their own ethnicity and to ignore their own past and to assimilate to a white culture that's not even theirs. But here we are. Now they are perpetuating it again. They're using their status. Well, Dean Tanaka doesn't really have status anymore, and Chuck Norris doesn't really anymore either, but Rafael Cruz does. So they spent their whole lives and careers pretending to be white people and running away from the bigots, and now they're actually creating the same situation for a new generation of people. The thing that's sad about this is, when you grow up in an American education system, you hear about the Nazis so much. You hear about them all the way through kindergarten, grade school, middle school, high school, and in college. I was only studying business, but I heard a whole bunch of crap about Nazis. Every time we brought up fascism, there's a little picture of Adolf Hitler, or there's a picture of insert your Nazi here. Just like Dean Tanaka did, just like Carlos Norris did, and just like Rafael Cruz did. Now, even though they are in a minority and of an ethnicity that would be targeted by these groups, they still just pretend to be white and perpetuate and support those same reactionary policies today. Maybe they'll get away with it and maybe they won't. I don't know. But when you looked at the Nazis, just like I did, just like they did, when we were kids and we were taught about that, the difference between me and them is I looked at the Nazis and went, you know what? Those were the bad guys. When they looked at the Nazis, they looked at them and said, well, I thought they had some pretty good ideas. I'm just going to pretend to be a white person. It's really sad and pathetic, but that is the way it is. That although you can learn about fascism and authoritarian politics, it doesn't stop people from wanting to be authoritarian. And that is kind of sad. Because Chuck Norris was one of my childhood heroes. He had a lot of PSA videos that telling kids to stay in shape and stay in school, and he was just some guy that I always envisioned always had stood for what's right, and as I got older, I realized he is nothing more than just some reactionary. So is Ted Cruz is the same way, and of course Dean Tanaka, Dean Cain. That's why debating doesn't work. We need to focus on getting people to vote.